to the welcome to the alt-right's premiere spoopy podcast, Fortean words. And this week, because Hobbit let me know 10 minutes before the show that he wasn't coming on, we have Donnie as my co-host.
Hello.
Evening. Right, so let's get stuck into some spoopy stories. Yes. I do this a lot when I'm on my own. I say so a lot. It really annoys me. French film released in 1947 predicted several modern technologies with a remarkable level of accuracy. Historical depictions of the future, especially those in TV shows and movies from the first half of the 20th century, tended to focus on woefully whimsical space-age concepts that were pretty far off the mark. But as it turns out, some early predictions of the 21st century were surprisingly accurate. One prime example of this is 1947 film Television, Oi the Man. Oi, fucking, this is when you need Hobbit, isn't it?
Oyel de Man.
Oi.
Television of Tomorrow.
Television of Tomorrow, which was based on a short story by René Barjavel and produced by J.K. Raymond Millet, as a depiction of a future envisaged only a few short years after the end of World War II. In a 4-minute clip from the film that's been recently doing the rounds on Twitter, people can be seen going about their daily lives while glued to tiny television sets reminiscent of today's mobile phones. While the devices themselves aren't quite spot on, the behaviour of the people using them certainly is, with people walking around, sitting in cafes, going on their business while glued to the screen. The film also shows someone driving along while watching a screen fitted to the car's dashboard. It even predicts that people will be so engrossed in such devices they'll inadvertently walk into another and even get into car accidents because they're not paying attention to driving. We're not sure about the man sneakily watching a holographic projection of a woman dancing while his wife is sleeping in bed to him, however. You can check out the clip from the film below.
That'll probably get us straight.
Puis, on fera des postes récepteurs de télévision bijou.
It's all in frog anyway.
Yeah.
So, what do you think to that then, Donnie?
There's a lot of things like that have been predicted, like Jules Verne, the Jetsons, flying cars, big screens.
1984.
Way back.
1984 would be one of them.
Cameras everywhere, future crime, biometrics.
Yeah.
It's all coming true.
Yeah. It's like dystopian future seems to be a blueprint, not a warning now, doesn't it?
I think they made a lot of this stuff just so that it actually would, come true.
Just to kind of like get you into it.
Well, it's like a primer, because a lot of this stuff is way before its time, like Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, it's kind of weird the stuff that hasn't occurred, like holographic TVs and things like that.
That's because it would be too expensive. Although I think VR is going to be this,
the replacement for it.
Yeah.
I'll see if Marco wants to come on. So yeah, it's like meal pills. Do you remember? Like did you ever have that, Donnie? You know, like did you have like a like future science type program? Because we used to have a program called Tomorrow's World, where they'd kind of talk about inventions that were in the pipeline and like what could possibly happen in the future, and it was all silver suits and meal pills, weren't it?
Pretty much. I mean, if you think about back in the 60s, they had TV dinners, then they have like dehydrated food. It's not that big of a jump ahead if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's military technology that's always ahead of the times. That's what the UFOs basically, and then now you have those, those like little flying drones that everyone has.
Well, flying cars are still a way off, aren't they? I mean, it's like we don't seem to get the cool future stuff. We seem to get the fucking dystopic stuff, don't we?
Yeah, nothing. You look at the Jetsons and look at it now.
Yeah.
Or Star Trek. Like all you had was the, basically phaser gun that stun gun now, pretty much.
Oh yeah, did you ever see that Bluetooth? Did you ever see that that Bluetooth thing that you could buy, where you could buy it? It was like a Bluetooth thing, and it was a Star Trek communicator from the '60s series. Basically, you could Bluetooth. You could do all the shit for your phone using it.
Yeah, the comic books, like Dick Tracy had, the little watches you could wear. I mean, that's kind of like the Apple Watch, if you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it is, isn't it? Because he talked to Bass on his wristwatch, didn't he?
A lot of those pulp comics had a lot of, interesting stuff like the Phantom or the Shadow.
Batman with all his gadgets.
A lot of it was basically detective comics. So solving crimes. That was the big thing back then, because that's back in the day when they gave kids chemistry sets.
Yeah. I mean, it's like kids' toys used to be Meccano and chemistry sets and things like that, and now it's just like computer games, isn't it? It's like, do you think it's just like part of the dumbing down of society?
Yeah, because I remember when I got a chemistry set, it was basically like a green chemistry set, so it was how to like test to see if the water was safe. Like iodine pills if you were going camping. It wasn't anything like a 1950s chemistry set where you actually could have some fun in the backyard.
You probably lose a hand or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So what else have we got? We got what's it? There's one that's literally just popped up. World UFO Day 2020. The phenomenon lives on. I'm going to be going through some UFO reports later anyway. So there's an annual event, celebrates all things UFO related and reminds enthusiasts worldwide to watch the skies. Intended to help raise awareness of the undoubted existence of UFOs, World UFO Day is a special event for UFO enthusiasts and researchers, as well as for disclosure advocates who are attempting to encourage world governments to reveal what they know about UFOs. The day also commemorates the best-known UFO case of them all, that of the object which crashed on a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico, and was later covered up by the military. Is that like accepted fact now that a UFO crashed there and was covered up?
I've heard a few different theories. One of them was this guy. He's like a conspiracy theorist. I think his name's like Dwayne Dietrich or something. He has like three names, and he said that it was Japanese internment camp workers who would be put into test aircraft to test it out, and that's why they said it was like a yellow or a yellowish man in a suit.
Holy fuck!
Because it wasn't that far from the internment grounds, so
Or there's I'm pretty sure I've heard a theory where they said that Roswell was a distraction from like a real crash landing like somewhere else or something like that. But
then you had like USOs, undersea objects.
Jesse Marcel Jr. has been chasing this for years, though, hasn't he? He's been. I think he's like spent almost his whole life trying to clear his dad's name, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Because there's that anecdote, isn't there, that he was somewhere in Washington, because apparently he's over in Washington quite a bit, and somebody stopped him, and they literally said, this government that you think is running the place, they're not, they don't really have the power. I mean, this was before the deep state become like this was probably long before Trump was elected anyway, so they hinted at us at fuck, I'm blanking. What do they call the deep state? That's the word I'm thinking of. So even then they hinted that there was a deep state and like the president is just a puppet.
Well, yeah, it's like what happened to Patton. Patton wanted to go forward with cleaning out the Reds, but for some mystical reason, he just died in an accident.
Yeah. Right, so
a quote here from Senator Harry Reid. I'm glad the Pentagon is finally releasing this footage, but it only scratches the surface of in materials available.
Well, didn't the Americans
take a serious scientific look at this?
Didn't didn't the Americans do the same as the British, where they basically said, yeah, we're going to hand over all UFO reports, and then they said, well, we're not collecting them anymore.
Yeah, and anyone who saw anything was called a nut. That's why any, pilots who saw something that was in like an odd pattern that was flying faster than them, they wouldn't do it because they'd lose their job because they'd be, branded insane, and they don't let insane people fly planes, do they?
Yeah, exactly. What was it? I personally don't know if there exist little green men on other places. I kind of doubt that. I do believe the information we have indicates that we should do a lot more study, he said previously. So this is what they do, isn't it? You get a bit on the news, you get the X-Files music, they start talking about the little green men, and they try and make it sound really, really wacky and unbelievable, don't they?
Yeah, and I mean, what was that spin-off of X-Files? It was like the Revenge
The Lone Gunman.
guys. Yeah, and that kind of, it's like predictive programming. It's kind of the same with a lot of this stuff you see in the old comic books, because I mean, the circuitry was around for that stuff. They just couldn't miniaturize it back then.
Yeah. So next story we've got: Exorcist visits Icelandic farm near Elfhill. Did you actually listen to our episode on the fairies?
I think I did.
Holy
That
fuck,
was the one
scary!
before, the gift, yeah.
That was me and Zero. Holy fuck, fairies were scary little bastards. I always wonder, the 411 stuff. That sounds like a fairy, because there have been fairy abductions, haven't there? It sounds like a fairy abduction. I don't know whether you remember that story about the guy that stepped into the fairy circle and disappeared. His friends could all hear him, but they couldn't see him. Well, I've heard that in a missing 411 story.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. And to go on with it, it's steeped with folklore and mythology. Iceland is certainly no stranger to tales of ghosts, elves, and other fantastical creatures. Even today, there are many who take such things very seriously indeed. And I think in England, that is kind of part of your folklore, that, there's fairies and like wood elves and stuff like that. Like, people have seen this kind of stuff, or claim to have at least.
Well, when we were researching it, we also came a lot. Even the American Indians have folklore about little people.
Yeah, like leprechauns, but whatever.
Yeah. But some Indian name. So,
one recent example, power company Landsvirkjun took the decision to hire an exorcist, Reverend Kristen August Fridfinson, to deal with an alleged haunting of an old farm near Hovjolsvjoller. The farm's owner, Dana Magnuson, was adamant that the place was a home to a ghost. It was probably around 2002 that I noticed my cows were perturbed, he said. I had a dog then who would fetch them while I was tending to the cowshed. He recalled a great fog would rise up in the air before feeling a ghostly hand on his shoulder. Wow, this is creepy shit.
Yeah. Good job Saz ain't listening tonight. I didn't feel well, but when I calmed down, I went into the cowshed. It was like I'd been splashed in the face with icy water, he said. I hesitated but kept going. Now, it was such a strong feeling, like I'd been plunged into water several metres deep. The farm itself is allegedly built on an elf hill, with the farm structures strategically placed to avoid disturbing any little people that may reside there. We thought it was self-evident and natural to go with the wishes and recommendations of Daniel about getting an exorcist before the building was demolished, said Landsvirkjun, project manager of Olaf Ross Karadottir. Was it? Yeah. Dottir means something, doesn't it?
It means daughter.
Daughter of, yeah.
So, yeah. That's how they're named in Iceland. It's son, and like daughter.
Yeah. He knows the area best of all. I don't know whether an exorcist for the little people is probably going to work. It probably might just piss them off.
Yeah. It'd really make Varg mad.
Is he Iceland? No, he's Sweden. He's Sweden, isn't he?
Norwegian, I believe.
Oh, is that what he is?
Yeah, I think so, because black metal was in, was it Norway? I'm sure chat knows. Is it Norway?
Evening, people.
Hey, it's Hobbit.
Save the day.
I regret to say I can't be on there. My family are insisting I be so.
You be sociable. That's aren't they just evil? Is that it? Just quick visit, or you stopping for a minute?
Condolences, Hobbit. Salutations.
I think he's gone already.
Oh, okay.
What else we got? Mystery as massive star since simply disappears. Astronomers have been left scratching their heads after a huge star they were observing mysteriously vanished. Situated 75 million light years away in the Kinman dwarf galaxy, the star is what is known as a luminous blue variable and is an incredible 2.5 million times brighter than the sun. It had been the subject of study for over a decade until 2019, when PhD student Andrew Allen of Trinity College Dublin and colleagues who have been planning to make new observations using the European Southern Observatory's ESO, Very Large Telescope, VLT, discovered to their surprise the star had completely disappeared. Astronomers speculate the star may have collapsed into a black hole. However, this is generally unheard of, as such an event should have been accompanied by a supernova explosion. We were surprised to find out the star had disappeared, said Allen. It would be highly unusual for such a massive star to disappear without producing a bright supernova explosion. It is also possible the star has transformed into a less luminous star, partially hidden by dust, which would also explain why it seems to have disappeared from view. Either way, it's a mystery that astronomers will be actively working to solve over the coming years. We may have detected one of the most massive stars of the local universe going gently into the night, said study co-author Jose Groh. There you go. Disappearing stars.
Well, there are wormholes. I mean, anything can happen in space.
Yeah. Weird. Maybe some aliens nicked it. Maybe some aliens nicked it to power something.
Could just be the instrumentation. They could have, like, misplaced it, you know?
Yeah, Galactus set it. So, what's this one then? Glitch in the Matrix as plane hovers motionless. Intriguing footage shows an airliner seemingly hovering motionless in the air, but is it just an optical illusion? This peculiar video was filmed from a moving vehicle and shows what appears to be an airplane hovering just above some nearby trees. Did it get lost? Is it a hologram that got lost on the way to on the way to the Twin Towers?
Yeah, it's like that Project Bluebeam where they can project things like that.
Yeah, the plane looks like looks like it's just hovering. The man behind the camera can be heard saying, "Looks like a big one. Look at it for real. It looks like it's just hovering there." As the video continues, he winds down the car window to get a clearer look at the plane. Sure enough, the airliner doesn't appear to be moving, but is it really hovering motionless in the sky, or could the peculiar spectacle be little more than an optical illusion? That plane is just flying into a really strong headwind, one user wrote. It's still getting enough air in its wings to generate lift, but I'm guessing the pilots just don't want to give the engines more throttle because they're trying to land. So while the plane is probably still moving from the perspective of a moving car, its forward motion is so slight it creates the illusion that it's sitting still. One way or another, it's an interesting effect. So what do you reckon then, Donnie?
I think you could probably play that video if...
That plane looks like it's just hovering. It looks like a big one as well.
Holy shit, it does look like it's just sat there.
Look at it, for real. It looks like it's just kind of hovering there. Wow. I almost want to stop on the side of the road so you can see. It's really moving. That is crazy.
Don't they? Hold on. Don't planes have to travel at a certain speed to generate lift anyway?
Yeah, because if they don't, they'll fucking fall down.
Yeah, exactly. So they must be going. I don't know what takeoff speed is on a plane. I'll have a look.
You didn't play the UFO video, did you?
No.
Stationary plane one we did.
What, you just
I'll be back. I'll be back when we talk, and I'll talk about the UFO thing.
Okay then.
Why can't you talk about stationary planes? They're the same thing as UFOs, dude.
Yeah. Oh come on! I'm just waiting. This page is late. Ask a captain what speed does the 747 take off and land, and the fucking page is blank, bastard. What's Quora like? Is that useless for answers?
Yeah, I mean, my brother will answer you on there. if that's what you mean.
Right, commercial passenger jets. So this is just like a rough idea because it's some retard on the internet. They take off at speeds ranging from 270 to 320 kilometers an hour. I can't remember what that is in real money. What they done it in kilometers an hour for, the benders? So it's got to at least be doing that, which means it's got to look like it's moving, hasn't it? Because otherwise, if it can't be going slow enough that it looks like it stood still, because it'd just drop out of the sky, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, unless it was a glider that was over, like a.
That's definitely a 747, though, isn't it? Without a doubt.
Yes. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think of is if they had one of those, what the fuck are those things that like spin around that cause inertia? You know what I'm talking about. Gyroscope, yeah.
Yeah.
If they had like a gyroscope in there and some balloons just to keep it stationary, it could have been some kind of prop for, like an experiment,
Yeah. Unless they're practicing the holographic thing.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff was weird, even back to the 9/11 stuff with the planes, because a lot of that some of them did not look like civilian aircraft.
Yeah. So there you go. I think to be honest, 9 times out of 10 it's usually the military pissing around that's behind this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So light flare from merging black holes detected. That sounds fucking insane, doesn't it? For the first time ever, astronomers have picked up light produced by 2 colliding black holes. When 2 black holes are on a collision course, they will begin their dance of death by spiraling around one another before finally colliding, producing ripples through space and time known as gravitational waves, which, thanks to recent advancements, scientists are now able to detect. For some time, however, astronomers have speculated that merging black holes might also produce visible light in the form of a flare bright enough to be picked up by optical telescopes here on Earth. Until now, the idea of detecting such a phenomenon seemed like a long shot, but just recently, the team at Caltech's Zwicky Transient Facility (ZTF) near San Diego picked up an anomalous light signal, and that could have been produced by the merger of 2 black holes. The event itself was identified on May the 21st, 2019, by 2 independent gravitational wave detectors, which gave scientists the opportunity to hunt for signs of a visible flare in the same region. This detection is extremely exciting, said study co-author and NASA astrophysicist Daniel Stern. What, the dude out of Home Alone?
Home Alone. Yeah.
The sticky scientist. There's a lot
bandits.
There's a lot we can. Yeah, he's at NASA. He's probably one of the wet bandits, isn't he? There's a lot we can learn about these 2 merging black holes and the environment they were in based on the signal they sort of inadvertently created. So the detection by ZTF, coupled with what we can learn from the gravitational waves, opens up a new avenue to study both black hole mergers and these disks around supermassive black holes. Jesus, that must be a serious amount of energy then, mustn't it, to just like create a spontaneous amount of light?
Yeah, I'm thinking that they must use some kind of like mass spectroscopy to do this, but it's on like a very large scale with telescopes.
Yeah. I know absolutely nothing about. Do you know a bit about astronomy then, do you, Tom?
I've done like the kind of spectroscopy you do in a chemistry lab.
Yeah.
So that's like infrared, fluorescent, visible spectrum, UV, and something like this, if it's like energy, and this it's probably like, sine and cosine waves that they're looking at from the the time at which the light hits it, to which they can't read it anymore. With the Hubble telescope that they have, they're probably just running it through all kinds of algorithms just to, get a formula for it, to plot it on like a, axes of, X, Y, and Z. But that is interesting. It's basically dark matter.
What happened? So what do you know anything about what happens when two black holes collide? Then do they cancel each other out? Do you get one big black hole? I mean, what the fuck happens?
I mean, I'd assume they just envelop each other and like cancel each other out.
I don't know. Well, it says
Like,
merge in
like
black
two
holes,
doors.
so maybe they do
Yeah, they
merge and
merge.
turn into a big black hole.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, there's not really a like a lab for, astrophysics. It's not like Neil deGrasse Tyson can take you into space and, fly you in one place and you come out and see the dinosaurs.
Yeah, let's ask Neil deGrasse Tyson what happens, shall we?
Yeah.
See if he knows.
I mean, does anyone really know? I mean, because it's, I know the
It's
paranormals do, like,
99%
the whole
theory,
thing.
isn't it? What happens out in
Yeah.
space?
Who really knows? It could all be a simulation for all we know.
Well, they say that Einstein created all of these laws. They're not laws. They're theories, aren't they? Because
I
no one's.
watched a couple of videos about him, and he plagiarized a lot of his relativity theory.
That's starting to come out now, isn't it? Who did he plagiarize from?
I think it was one of those things like, they say, oh, they were chased out of Germany and Austria, but I mean, it was like the trend at the time. I think he ended up in a university in New Jersey. I forget which school he was at, but Red Ice did a whole episode on how he was a plagiarist and he stole from them.
What a surprise!
I miss the conspiracy stuff.
But like I say, a lot of that's just kind of they're not laws, they're theories, aren't they? There's no. Because when I was looking into the flat Earth stuff, I was reading some of the stuff that apparently even gravity's not a settled theory, is it?
Obviously not if you have that plane there.
Yeah. Did you catch any of that Skinwalker Ranch stuff on the History Channel, Don?
Not really. I heard about it though.
Yeah, they had actually the top scientists. They were going through the place and they found like loads of like anomalies. It was really quite interesting. They found a fuck ton of radiation.
That's crazy.
Very strange place.
There's radiation that's usually like the decaying isotopes of, whatever element it is. So it usually just turns into thorium. And that's why radon gas was such a problem, because there was in granite, I believe, like some of the, elemental radon would decrease, but it was such a heavy gas that it would be very low on the ground. That's why kids would have problems with it. That's why they used to have to read for that stuff back in the 80s.
Yeah, radon used to be a huge thing, didn't it?
Yeah, it's strange. Why isn't it ever talked about now? Did it just disappear?
Well, it's like it's the 5G nuts. They don't mention the leukemia rates at the bottom of electricity pylons, do they?
No.
That was something that's gone away, wasn't it? The leukemia rates around the bottom of electricity pylons.
Well, yeah, it was like the people who lived under power lines and under, airports and got cancer. They just stopped talking about it.
Yeah. So, next story, they found a record-breaking 700... I wish they'd stopped talking in fucking kilometres. Record-breaking 700-kilometre lightning bolt boarded. Jesus Christ, that's...
A lightning bolt was able to span the distance equivalent to that between Boston and Washington, D.C.
Fuck.
Thunderstorms can be frightening at the best of times, but imagine a fork of lightning so extensive that it cuts across 700 kilometers in one go. Now, according to the World Meteorological Organization, such a bolt from the blue, referred to as a mega flash, occurred over Brazil on October 31st, 2018, a new world record. Experts also confirmed a new record holder for the longest duration of a lightning strike, a whopping 16.73 seconds, which struck Argentina on May 4th, 2019.
So they're saying that like the fork of electricity sat there for 16 seconds.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Jesus, that is fucking one hell of a long time, isn't it? I wonder what's causing this. There must be some sort of atmospheric thing, mustn't there?
Yeah. Well, when they would make it rain back in the day, didn't they put like saline crystals in the clouds?
Is that how they used to do it? Because I read once
Yeah.
years ago. I can't remember I think I actually threw the book out, but I had like one of these kids' first paranormal books, like really basic one, and they spoke about this dude that actually created that had made a weather machine, but he let the secret die with him because he didn't trust anyone else to have it. They got him. This place hadn't had rain for ages, and then he basically flooded the place.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't tell anyone exactly how he did it.
Yeah, there are chemicals you can use on, clouds to make it. They can control the weather. I do believe that.
Do you think like the New York, it was those storms that went down the East Coast? Do you think they were controlled by HAARP then? Do you think they were a test? Was it Hurricane Sandy? Was it Hurricane Sandy a few years ago?
I believe so.
Because some people think that HAARP controlled that, don't they?
I mean, it's just really strange that, even the chemtrail stuff, I mean, who knows, really? But it is really crazy. They can do that. And that's from like Boston to New York. That is a long, unless something was grounding that, I don't know what it could be.
What's that in miles then? It's like 400 odd, isn't it? Because 800 kilometres is 5 miles, isn't it? Was it the other way around? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 8 to 5. It's 5 miles is 8 kilometres, isn't it? So you're getting on for like 450, something like that at a fucking guess off my head.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a long lightning bolt, isn't it?
Knows kilometers, so that's, that's 1, 2, 3. It's like 3 states.
Yeah.
I'd like to know the common denominator, though. Like, was there, there's one airport here, there's one airport there. So, like, who knows what it is? Or it could have been a reactor. You never know. Solar flares can cause all kinds of shit. It doesn't take much to set the world off its axis,
Yeah. Hold on a sec. Daz hasn't seen the link for...
Yeah, we could get her in here. I think she's a little bit, I think she would rather talk about this than what she's currently talking about.
She likes a bit of woo-woo, doesn't she?
Yeah. They found a lost continent.
Zealandia.
Yeah.
Is this because they're forever searching for Atlantis? Where do you think Atlantis was then?
I think Atlantis was probably the Canary Islands,
Yeah?
Because that would fit a lot of the lore.
But being Atlantis, do you not think it could have been in the middle of the Atlantic, or...?
The sea levels were a lot... it depends how low the sea levels were back then, but what are the islands? The Madeira, I think it is, and the Canaries, and it could be the Balearics as well. It's not really, the world was much smaller then, so they could have thought that was their Atlantis.
There's also there's some islands off of Cornwall, isn't there? The Scilly Isles are completely underwater now, aren't they? But they used to be above water. Not the Scilly Isles.
The Faroes?
No, it's down there. I'm sure there's down near Cornwall. There's a sunken...
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of this stuff came from Greece, didn't it? From like Greece and Rome,
Hmm.
records of it.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of I found a place called Hall Sands, which was taken by the sea in 1917.
Yeah, because there's currently what is it, like Mauritius, that island that's getting, the sea's rising and that's going away. So stuff can go away pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is the article. Geologists have released a series of detailed maps showing a long-lost landmass in the southwest Pacific. Situated to the east of Australia, Zealandia is an entire continent of 5 million square kilometers that sank beneath the waves between 60 and 85 million years ago. Nowadays, New Zealand is pretty much all that's left of this once enormous landmass. However, thanks to modern satellite imaging techniques, it's finally become possible to begin slowly unraveling the shape and scale of this genuine lost world for the first time. Now, the team behind GNS Science, a New Zealand-based research group, has released a number of highly detailed new maps showing the hidden continent in all its glory. We made these maps to provide an accurate, complete, and up-to-date picture of the geology of New Zealand and the Southwest Pacific area better than they had before, said the geologist Nick Mortimer. Their value is that they provide a fresh context in which to explain and understand the setting of New Zealand's volcanoes, the plate boundary, and sedimentary basins.
That's interesting. Maybe Atlantis is New Zealand then. Because there's
'cause
Atlantis,
this explains
because
a
there's
lot.
Atlantis and Lemuria, isn't there? Lemuria's.
Yes. That would explain marsupials because you see the same weird like lemur type things and monitor lizards in that whole like, Indian Ocean from like New Zealand all the way to, Madagascar.
Madagascar, yeah.
Yeah, like whole different, species developed there. And they have like a reptile in New Zealand that can live up to 250 years. So there's definitely like a lot of stuff nobody knows. It just people care more about dumb shit than looking into this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, nobody wants to explore anymore, do they?
No, I mean the under the water is probably more unexplored than any place else. Like
I
there's
think it's
massive
a tiny,
oceans.
tiny percentage of the world of the water that we've actually explored, isn't there?
Yeah, because I remember Google Maps was editing stuff out, especially now with all the conflict in the Spratly Islands, which is right in the South China Seas. They have some kind of secret base there that's just conflicting reports of all kinds of weird stuff.
Here's a bit of a fun one. Alistair Crowley's home to be restored by 2022. The Loch Ness home of the infamous occultist could become a major tourist attraction within 2 years. Situated near Foyers at the southeast side of Loch Ness, Scotland, Boleskine House was built in the 18th century in an area with a long history of peculiar happenings. Yeah, because I heard the story about, but you know about Boleskine House, do you, Donny?
Yeah.
Where he summoned a demon, but he never got round to going back and sending it back, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jimmy Page owns it now, doesn't he?
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, yeah. Do you think they're Satanists then and Led Zeppelin?
I think a lot of people in that industry, just from what we've seen in the past 4 years with that, whatever her name is, like, was it Marina Abramowitz or whatever it is?
Abramovich. Marina Abramovich, yeah.
They believe in like Kabbalah, sex magic, and it's all kind of the same. And they also believe in like this numerology where certain things happen on certain days. I think they call it like gematria or something.
Gematria. Isn't Gematria... I'll have to look. Really know much about this stuff. I'm actually going to get... England said he'll come on sometime because he used to be a member of Golden Dawn. I don't think we know that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he's going to come on and talk to you about me. Gematria is...
every letter has a number to it, a number value, and there's like different types of it. So
you can actually insert. You can actually insert a phrase, and it will calculate the gematria for it. Gematria is Hebrew or something. English, Hebrew, and simple gematria calculator. Yeah, it's definitely that's what does it say there? It says it's a Syro-Babylonian Greek system of alphanumeric code or cipher that was later adopted into Jewish culture. So,
yep.
Go.
That's why everyone goes crazy when they see a 33, because
Is that a
66
Gematrian number then? Is it?
Yeah, everything. Well, the thing is like there used to be this like conspiracy. I forget who he was, but he kind of fell into off-track sports betting. So he'd predict who would win, and then he'd say, "Oh, I was right about who I picked to win the Super Bowl after the Super Bowl happened."
Yeah.
Or he would say, "Oh, I knew this was going to happen using my gematria calculator." Whether it was some world event that happened, terrorism, or like a building fell, and you could all tie it back to something. It was just, it's very, because if you use 3 different calculators, you can make anything say whatever you want it to.
Yeah. You can. You're always working backwards, aren't you?
In this kind of stuff, it's like fodder for that, because they look at, Loch Ness, how many letters is that? Ness has, they just took up the numerical value of that, and then restored by 2022, so they add all that up, and it adds up to a 6. It's insanity.
Yeah, so pretty fucked, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of that stuff is old school. It's like old school stuff that people like. The holy rollers like to talk about that stuff, about Aleister Crowley, and back when we were kids and they said heavy metal was evil and they had to deprogram kids, and send them to church.
How popular the house would be once it does. It's going to open to the public after it's been repaired. So they're going to. Over the past few months, efforts have been made to remove rubble from the house's interior, and now property developers Keith and Kyra Reddy, that's a weird name, Reddy with 2 Ds, have provided an update on the work, stating the next steps to repair and restore the granite stone and to replace the building's roof. We have planned for this work to take place over the winter into spring 2021, said Keith. We will then start to restore the inside. We plan to be finished by spring 2022. It will be great to be finally putting things inside the house rather than the relentless removal of rubble from the inside. We plan to restore the building to the grand Georgian hunting lodge that it once was. That will include a panel room, a whiskey room, a formal dining room, and a library with books on the house's past. It doesn't look that big, does it? No. There must be a lot more to it. It must go down some levels or something, mustn't it?
Yeah, it must have like underground chambers for like, all kinds of weird shit.
Yeah, dirty old Crowley. Bizarre painted fish, that looks boring. Siberian forest is... steam-powered bot could explore icy moons. Try that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Scientists have conceived of a steam-powered robotic hopper bot that could explore Europa and Enceladus. While icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn remain some of the most tantalising destinations in the solar system to explore with robotic landers, the potentially chaotic surface landscapes of these worlds will make a conventional wheeled rover more or less useless. Now, in a renewed bid to find a viable alternative, scientists have come up with a novel new robot. The concept known as Sparrow, steam-propelled autonomous retrieval robot for ocean worlds. The robot features a protective spherical cage capable of freely rotating, self-righting, and tumbling across most of uneven surfaces. To propel itself, the robot could collect and heat up ice using the steam to hop into the air. Scientists also envisage that the Sparrow could have an accompanying lander that it could return whenever it's needed to refuel or drop off samples it might have collected during its travels. Its operators will need to be careful though, because if the robot happened to roll down a steep incline into a crevasse, there's no way it'd be able to get out again. check out a concept for the video for the Sparrow video. So, one question: how do they make the steam? Would they use
probably condensation
batteries?
You know, like yeah, because in the the batteries that they use, the lithium batteries,
Yeah.
it takes I think it uses like the urine and the CO2, and that kind of like goes to like lithium, so that kind of cleans it. It also gets some like lithium into the batteries, and that's also how they can electrolyze. You put one like a cathode.
Well,
and
this
an
one's going to be
anode.
completely automated, so they won't
Yeah.
be able to use urine anyway.
No. I mean, there must be some gases. I mean, yeah, because there's talking about like a gaseous planet or like a, watery planet. So whether it's ammonia, which is like Jupiter, or whatever elements that they're gonna configure it to, they could use that to make it jump all around, like a pneumatic pump.
Interesting stuff, though, isn't it? I mean, because it's. Are they trying to invent some sort of perpetual motion machine? I
mean, that's not far off.
Yeah, it's not far off. If it's fueling itself, is it? I just wonder how they make the steam. That's the one I was wondering about.
Well, I don't think it would be the steam that we know. It would probably be they'd probably use some kind of like tungsten alloy, so it even if it was in some acidic planet, it wouldn't like melt the the materials it's made of. Because like some of the atmospheres, it would just disintegrate. If it's like ammonia, if it's like a very basic or very acidic thing, it would just like kill metal.
There's an Unsolved Mysteries reboot coming to Netflix. And the Tulsa Riot's going to be on that one then, are they? What else is in here? I don't think it's... Ancient Village was destroyed by a comet. I think we did all these ages ago.
Yeah.
Should you hunt ghosts in your own home? Let's do this one. Carrying out a paranormal investigation of your own personal abode may have some serious drawbacks. With the coronavirus pandemic putting a stop to most paranormal investigations, many enthusiasts are looking for ghosts without actually leaving the house. But is it a really good idea to try capturing evidence of paranormal phenomena in your own home? I'd probably say no. A recent article published in the Southside Times argues that it isn't for several reasons. Perhaps the most obvious: if you're used to going out visiting various purportedly haunted locations, your home serves as a sanctuary from this, a place to feel safe and secure. If you start to believe your own home is haunted, it makes it difficult to switch off. It can feel like an intrusion that permeates your day from which you cannot escape. Blah blah. Believing your home to be haunted can also be potentially distressing. Yeah, so they're saying no.
Yeah, I mean, how do they? I mean, there are some cases where people see ghosts at old historical locations, and then they ever see those ghost hunters things? They just use like some kind of thermal imaging camera and a microphone. It's just like.
Have you seen Dan Aykroyd's doing a new paranormal show? Did you know his dad was a big time ghost hunter?
That would explain a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So apparently he's going to do a new TV show called Hotel Paranormal.
Yeah, and they're doing like a new ghost. Like it goes in cycles because like the UFO shit was dead in the 90s, and then it went to like, the Blair Witch Project and demons and vampires and all that. They went through like the whole, all the old monsters. So now they're just going to go back to ghosts.
Yeah, exactly. What's this one? Haunted Michigan town was like living in hell. Isn't that just basically living in Michigan?
Pretty much.
So, new TV series that will explore cases of entire towns that have been incessantly plagued by paranormal activity. With a population of 755, the small town of Merrill, Michigan, might seem at a glance like any other rural settlement. On closer inspection, however, things are anything but ordinary. Since the 1970s, the town has been under siege by a relentless onslaught of paranormal incidents and strange phenomena, forcing some residents to pack up and leave entirely. First episode of the new Travel Channel series, Haunting in the Heartland, filmmaker Steve Shippey spoke to some of those whose lives have been impacted by these peculiar events. One family who left the town in 1974 recalled being forced to move after enduring 6 months of unexplained banging sounds and spontaneous fires which left them terrified. Another family who still lives in town has been tormented by unexplained cold spots, banging sounds and spontaneous scratch marks and sightings of a shadowy apparition. One resident described the town as a nightmare, while the other said it was like living in hell. The show, which started airing on February 21st, will also feature another number of other similarly haunted towns, including Malvern, Iowa, and Greenville, Tennessee. The stories of the Heartland show how powerful these cases can be, and how town folks stick together, said Shippey. Watching them fight for their peace is one of the most powerful things.
Yeah, I mean, you abandon a place long enough, and people are gonna see what they want to see, aren't they?
Yeah, right. So let's go on to
the night, you know.
Let's go on to a bit of content. I think Ian A might be back for that.
Yeah. Let's do the bit.
So while I was on, I'd actually planned for 2 weeks for Sazzy's things. So this week's a bit of a filler episode. But while I was having a look around, I found a website called Bufora. I don't know. I need to send you a link for it now. Stick it in general in it. So Bufora, which is I think it's like the British version of MUFON.
Yeah. UFOs.
Yeah, I thought I'd do some UFO reports. It's always nice to hear like normal people writing in reports. So, investigator is Matt Lyons. I'm going to start with, so I'm going from the UFO report section. So it's the Wingham Kent one I'm doing, Dunny.
Okay, yeah, I'm following along.
So, initial report from Ray Johnson, code of practice pseudonym used, which is nice to know that they, respect people's privacy. On the day of this sighting, Ray was out on one of his regular walks in this remote and relatively flat landscape. There are scant few agricultural buildings and the land is extensive in farming with wide open spaces. The weather was thick cloud to the west with a small break in the cloud to the south, with the sun breaking through to the left of a main coppice of woods. The woodland recedes abruptly and there is a clear run of vision to the horizon panning from the southwest to the south for about 1.5 miles, from which a windmill marks the start of a new line of trees. In Ray's account of his sighting whilst walking his dog, he states the following: I noticed something moving that I thought was a flight of geese. It caught my eye because right now this is not happening around here and it did not fit. See, this is a thing I find about ghost sightings is they go, you get the skeptics and they go, oh, everyone's first idea is that, oh, I've seen a ghost, when it's not, because the first thing your brain will try and do is go, yeah, that's not a ghost, won't it? It'll try and tell you it's something mundane, won't it? Is my opinion anyway, of like if you ever saw anything like that. Have you ever seen any UFO then? You never seen one?
Never.
I saw some lights from my bedroom window once. There was like 3 lights in the sky. I looked down because I was doing something. I looked down and then I looked back up and one had gone, and then looked down, looked back up, and another one had gone, and then looked down, looked back up, and the other one had gone as well. Which was kind of weird. They'd gone like too quick to be anything else, but they were just lights. They were just like orange lights.
Yeah, I had a friend who did. He saw something, and I think he also claims he was abducted by them, and who knows? Some crazy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because what makes me laugh is like I only found out recently that Betty and Barney Hill were Barney was black. Did you know that, Don?
No, I didn't.
I only found that out. It was like last year or something. I've known that case for like years and years and years, and no one's ever mentioned that he was black before. I found it was kind of funny. So he noticed something he thought was a flight of geese, caught his eye because it seemed weird, did not fit. So he said, I kept my eye on it and realised it was going too fast to be birds. Then I realised I was not looking at something a few hundred metres away. This thing passed into a lower density area of a cloud, heavy rain and storm clouds. CN, I don't know what that means. I don't know what's that shorthand for. Who's the guy? Oh, it's not even the guy. Yeah, so I don't know what that means. So it says heavy rain, storm clouds /C/N. He said that was maybe 5 miles away, maybe more due to the elevation. I'm not sure. As it did this, I saw that it was a solid object, dark grey /black. It was pointed at the front, hence me thinking I was viewing geese from my ground angle, and square-like to the back. It had about 5 sides like a classic diamond icon.
Yeah. Because they have those other ones that are like cigar-shaped, the ones you've seen like in Russia a couple of years ago.
Yeah, or triangle. It's like cigar-shaped triangle or saucer, isn't it? It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it was about 20 to 25 degrees vertical, and I tracked it with my eye through about 80 degrees horizontal before it passed out of sight behind the trees of a small coppice. I guess it was about 4 or 5 seconds I was watching it horizontal before it passed out of sight behind the trees of a small... Have I just read that twice? Watching it for... It was about 4 or 5 seconds I was watching it for. I was so agog, I couldn't say anything. My son was with me, but playing with the dog. And forget about trying to film it, it was gone. I tried to explain it away. Maybe it was a shadow of something on the clouds, but there was absolutely no way I can think of to explain what I saw, and I've seen most kinds of aircraft in flight. I was obsessed with the things as a kid, lived next to a military and commercial airport. When I got back to my parents' house, I told my mother what I had seen. She said she's been seeing weird stuff in the sky all week. She's even heard them. They make a buzzing / ringing noise, apparently. Has anyone else seen anything? I met Ray on location, and we got the positioning of the sighting photographed and filmed in transit with a live pan shot. It was reviewed at that the time was closer to between 10 to 15 seconds when we replayed the sighting footage and realised that the sighting from beginning to end was longer than the 5 seconds that Ray recalled from his realisation that he was not observing geese. The UFO was sketched in full detail, and this indicated the size of the object, which was placed in context to the size above the woods from where it first appeared. So that's that one. Mate, you got something to add, mate?
Just a UFO sighting above my town, mate.
Oh, go on then.
I think you better read it, mate, because...
Where is it? Hold on a sec. I just need to blow my nose, bluster for a sec.
I could, but my voice is annoying.
You can read, can't you?
Fucking of course I can, you cheeky cunt, mate. Alright, former BT engineer Graham Woodward was driving home near Westcott Place with his son Stefan, 18, at 8:19 p.m. when 3 brilliantly white lights in the shape of a triangle with a red light in the center appeared in the sky. The 62-year-old Nelson Street is convinced it was not a drone nor a military or commercial aircraft, as it had no blinking navigation lights. He could also not hear the sound of an engine when he wound his window down. So, skip this bullshit. It's just cringe, this one. Let me find this bit. There was a good bit that made me laugh, but let me find it. Fucking adverts. this movie. My boyfriend is in love with planes, and he said it's a Su-17 as it has red flashing lights. Another added, I can confirm from radar data that it was an RAF C-17 at 8:20. So it's just if it is an aircraft UFO, that's it. And it's a dead story, but I just found it funny.
Nice, cheers, mate. Thanks for that.
Yeah, sorry for ruining your show, mate. Fuck's sake, where's Hobbit?
He's being French.
Yeah.
I'm gonna rope Ian in next week for Fred West. I just got to reply to Ian. Yeah, I've got Ian on next week, so I've got someone proper.
Yeah, I'm not coming back on the show ever again now.
You're gonna have to use Sazzy's comfort animal for when she does a fucking Alex Jones bit. So that's a bit too long, that one. I'm not reading that one. Basically, 1967, Flying Cross. Have you ever heard of the Flying Cross style UFO?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Someone's been watching that Turbo Killer video, haven't they? Dear, let's see if we can skim through this. Cause it's massive. Orbit's back. Orbit mate.
Orbit mate.
Have you talked about the flying triangles yet?
Yes.
No, talking about flying crosses at the minute. If you know if there's a decent sighting of one.
No, that's completely new to me. Have you talked about like how there's been wood carvings of a battle in the skies above Germany in the 17th century?
I know it's in the Bible, isn't it? Is it Isaiah saw a flaming wheel or something, didn't he?
Yeah, and if Brutus was on, he'd have been a good guest for this one. He'd tell you about the fighting chariots that is in the Hindu poems. There's even, I mean, it's not technically a UFO, but if you look at some of the stories of the Danann and the Celtic gods like Lu had a spear which would shoot lightning, except the lightning was described as not collimated beams of light, but straight beams of light, what you and I would know as a laser beam. And Dan had a cauldron, and you dip your ladle into the cauldron, and it would come out with any food you wanted, and in any quantity you needed. So he had a replicator, Lou had a laser gun. Also, Lou had a shield which would deflect any blows, including blows of light. So he had a proper, like, electric shield.
Based.
I know it's a bit of a tangent, but I'm thinking whilst we're talking about this spooky technology, I mean, what's your guys' theories on where it comes from? Do you think it comes from within Earth or it's extraterrestrial?
I've heard of a couple of other explanations for UFOs. The one explanation is that they're from the future, and another one is they're from they're from the same space but a different dimension.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've thought about that because people talk about being on an ayahuasca experience, and they all describe seeing the same clockwork elves, which look suspiciously like the grey aliens. So I'm wondering if that they coexist with us on the same space and time, but because they're in a different dimension, they rarely interact with us.
Well,
and
it
tends to bugger up a little.
You know about the unified theory of the paranormal, don't you? That all paranormal phenomena is in fact the same. It's just different manifestations of it. Like they were demons, then they become fairies, then they become aliens. You know, as time went on, culturally they changed.
They're the same creatures, and you know, I for all these stories, I've been told to have a healthy distrust of all of them. So the fairy tales told me to be racist.
Let's watch out for the
Just
tar,
don't
baby.
Don't trust them fairy folk. What with, you know, them pointy-eared elves trying to say,
they'll turn your cow into tofu, won't they?
I mean, it's like, oh yeah, common hobbits, come with us to the Shimmering Isles. And I'm like, bugger off, mate. I like my Shire, simple as. Bilbo was wrong. Bilbo must have gone senile in it. Yeah, he must have gone senile in his old age. He's like,
I don't know. I think it's the same.
Based.
I think it's the same as the mouse going into the sea at the end of Thingy. I think someone's going off to heaven, aren't they? Is it the Lion, the Witch, and the Word? Have you seen? Is it the Voyage of the Dawn Treader? Where the little mouse goes off with Aslan to heaven.
The books of Narnia are a good series, which is often
a good Christian book series.
Yeah. Well, I could even argue Lord of the Rings is, but then I would argue that, wouldn't I? Because I like to sort of tie things into my Christian ideology.
But The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is overtly Christian. Aslan dying and then being resurrected and stuff like that. This is like in your face Christianity. Yeah. This is.
No, it very much is. I mean, there's no ambiguity about that. It's but it's an interesting story. I need to reread at some point because they were contemporaries. Tolkien and was it? No, not C.S. Lewis. He was before.
I think it was. No, it was C.S. Lewis.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
No, I'm thinking Lewis Carroll's the one who did Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
The best. Well, wasn't
he a kiddie fiddler?
Probably. I mean, it's
because that's a theory, isn't it? That Alice in Wonderland is all kiddie fiddling.
Yeah,
because Alice apparently Alice was a friend's child that he fancied or something.
Yeah, Lewis Carroll. I mean, bear in mind, photography was a new art these days, and I'm not sure if it was socially acceptable at the time. But he used to take pictures of her nude, and family approved, and he approved, and Alice. Well, she was just She was like, "You're going to go see Lewis, and you're going to have a daguerreotype made."
So was she the world's first
daguerreotype?
Was she the world's first Insta-thought then? Was she?
Well, I'm just thinking, was Alice in Wonderland the world's first fan fiction, or was that like the story of Helen of Troy? I don't know. But yeah, no, sorry, I'm getting Lewis Carroll and C.S. Lewis mixed up. So C.S. Lewis and what's his name, the other one, Tolkien, they would have gone to the Eagle and Child and the Lamb and Flag in Oxford. And those pubs are still open. Well, I say they're still open.
What do you call a resident of Oxford? Because I was going to say they're both Oxfordonians, aren't it?
Oxfordians?
They're Oxfordians. Yes. Well, it depends. Au revoir, à tout à l'heure, à demain. Bonne nuit. Sorry, I'm going to be social. Yeah, no. Is the thing right with the with Oxford? There's effectively two people living there. There's the town, which is people who work in the Rover plant, which I'm told have now been locked down because of the Ching Chong cough.
Yeah, are you going to say the people under the Eye of Sauron and the people in the Shire? Is that what you're saying of it?
No, no. I'm talking about the city proper. You've got town and gown. So you've got the gown, the intelligentsia, these supposed cream of the intellectuals in our country who thought it was a good idea to coat the roads of Oxford in rubber because, tarmac's very noisy. And it's like, yes, that's a good idea. Rubberizing roads does make them quieter. Except when it rains, the braking distance is nothing. So Oxford was an accident black spot. So there you go. That's what happens when ivory tower academics get involved with practical affairs. And then you've got the town, which, because Oxford always has been a fairly industrial city, despite the universities, they always need a supporting infrastructure to keep them fed and entertained. So that's why Oxford at one point did have a Grope Cunt Lane, and you can guess what sort of commerce took place on that street. It no longer exists, by the way. So tourists, if you're looking on Google Maps for it now, you won't find it. But that's just the city itself. I mean, the Oxfordshire people proper, the actual the ruralites, they are a different ilk.
Oh, for God's sake! No wonder no one's watching it. It's because I had it down as fucking unlisted. For some reason, it set itself to unlisted. I've just set it to public.
Well, for those that are joining just now, you can find our show, the Fortean Words, as a podcast, and it's available. And you just search for it in your favorite podcast app. And you type in. Well, I even looked on Google the other day, and I found there it is, Fortean Words.
We're on Google,
Anchor.fm.
Spotify. Hold on a sec.
All the popular platforms. You even find us in Tesco.
You've been unlisted too.
Yeah, no, I did that in settings. I've just made it public.
No, it's conspiracy. It's Google keeping us down because we're talking about the real truths.
You can actually find it. This is from. I've just checked my feed. You can find us on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Casts, RadioPublic, and Spotify, and also iTunes and Castbox. So there's not many places you can't get us.
The only place you can't get us is YouTube when you forget to set the stream to public.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, so I don't really have much to say about UFOs except people in the past were talking about them. They describe them as lights in the sky. And funny enough, even some in the stories I was told, there was a battle, and then after the battle, there was a strange noisome smell or noxious smell which descended upon the town. So maybe the explosions, some sort of bad gas was coming out of the vehicles which were being attacked.
Wait, if it was demons, that'd be sulfur, wouldn't it? I bet.
Hey, well, this is an interesting theory. I remember hearing a while ago about this was a theory about how the heavens is God's realm. And God likes burnt sacrifices, so don't skin that lamb, but burn it whole. And one of the things they do with vehicles which have come back from space is they've got a team with hazmat suits on, and they spray them down with steam pressure washers. And apparently, the smell of those vehicles when they come from space smells exactly like burning corpses. And I thought, ugh. I mean, you'd think, well, it's space. I mean, it's a rarefied gas. Surely there's no smell, but turns out the smell in there is rarefied. And if you think about it, space is very hostile.
Sounds like there's some real event horizon hours.
Well, carrying on a bit forward about this, because I'm thinking both the inside of Earth is inhospitable to life. I mean, I saw this crystal cave in Mexico somewhere with these giant quartz crystals. I mean, there are men standing next to them being dwarfed by the crystals. And they said the problem with it is there's a lot of sulfuric gas coming out there, so you can't really breathe because it melts your lungs. And it's 60 degrees, so whilst you can walk around with a gas mask, you'll soon faint from heat exhaustion. So we know that inside Earth is inhospitable to life, and outside Earth is inhospitable to life. And we've got this narrow band where it is hospitable. And I'm just thinking, these ships are coming. I say ships, vehicles, objects come from space, and they smell like burning corpses. And the thing is, there's few, if any, people who actually be allowed to approach a space vehicle as it's come back. So there's very few accounts of what they smell like, but the few I've heard have said it don't smell like roses.
God.
Well, I mean, this is probably interesting because I'm not sure if this would have been with the previous ones, but the modern vehicles, when they come back, they use aerogel as an insulator. And aerogel is very porous, so it's very good at... they were trying to do experiments in space to pick up, like, well, what's out there? Well, we'll use aerogel and we'll fly really fast, and that way it will force particles and any gases.
Oh, Hobbit! I was just browsing Unexplained Mysteries. I found one that you're gonna really like. Plans are in motion to replace the gargantuan atom smasher, the Hadron Collider, the gargantuan atom smasher with a new accelerator that is 4 times larger.
Well, this is always the case. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. They're always like, yeah, we need a bigger one. It's like, yeah, this portal to how we've opened's not big enough. We need to get the grand old demons to come through. You know, we got a little cat flap. We want to make it like double doors. That's basically what it is, right? I mean, I know the scientists and stuff say, "Oh, that's completely fanciful. What we're doing is actually high particle physics research." Yeah, you get bullshit, mate.
Some more
You're
good
opening
news,
up a
Hobbit.
portal to hell.
The Large Hadron Collider itself, which is set to resume operations in 2021, will continue to conduct experiments until at least 2027, after which its future will be uncertain. I don't think we could take another 2020 caused by them, could we?
I am so happy that the Large Hadron Collider is going to be smashing demons together until its ectoplasm shoots out and destroys that part of France and Switzerland.
Right, so CERN is expected to approve the construction of what has become tentatively known as the Future Circular Collider, which is the FCC, a 100-kilometre behemoth that will be 4 times the size and 6 times more powerful than the existing Large Hadron Collider.
I think behemoth's one of those demons from the Bible, so that's an apt term for it.
Yeah.
Leviathan, behemoth, and what's the other one? Kraken? I don't know.
Let's have a look.
I saw a bottle of that on the ferry, and I was like, I'm tempted to get that.
So behemoth is a beast mentioned in Job 40:15, verse 24, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Suggested
That's the Old Testament is old Job.
Yeah. Suggested identities range from a mythological creature to an elephant, hippopotamus, rhinoceros, or buffalo. Metaphorically, the name has come to be used for any large or powerful entity. Both behemoth and Leviathan are of Babylonian origin, where they are creatures of primal chaos. Behemoth of the earth and male, and Leviathan of the ocean deep and female.
Interesting, yeah, because it's not just the Babylonians which have that idea. I mean, the Greeks say that Aphrodite washed up on the shores of Cyprus in the foam. I think the implication of the foam was.
I've got some lines about Behemoth from the Bible. Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar, the sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong as pieces of brass, his bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God, that he that made him can make his sword approach unto him. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lieth under the shady trees in the covert of reed and fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadow, the willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not, for he trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He taketh it in with his eyes, his nose pierceth through snares.
It's a bit of unusual wordage there. I mean, the idea of like his tail is like a cedar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must have been huge.
This is I mean, one of these days we will have to talk about the ringing cedars of Russia. I think there's sufficient amounts of woo-woo in there that it can be an episode of Fortean words. But in the ringing cedars of Russia, they do mention that Solomon's Temple, that the wood was from Siberia, because they're talking about Siberian cider used in its construction. I don't know about that. There's a lot of fanciful stuff in that book series. I'll have to reread it one of these times, because I think there's about 10 books. But they do mention UFOs in that.
Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes named the Long Parliament Behemoth in his book Behemoth. Does Brutus know he did a book called Behemoth?
Worth asking him. Yeah. It's too bad that he's got antisocial hours. I mean, otherwise we could just say, Brutus, do you fancy coming on and give us a bit of insight about the Vairama and the flying chariots that Vishnu would fly around in?
Yeah.
Because this is the thing. I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, some people. I think Adam got really annoyed with UFOs, and he just says, "Oh, it's conspiracy theory to distract from military experimental aircraft." And I'm like, yeah, you're right. There are certainly unidentified aircraft flying around, some of them using electromagnetic propulsion, which are silent, and then when you're underneath them, electronics stop working, so your car just stops. But there's also like craft which are even more ancient than those, which have always been around, and it's like, well, what's that then? That's, you can't tell me someone in the 16th century in Germany was working on a VTOL aircraft which shot laser beams.
Yeah. Well, given the goblin-like creatures that our government does deals with, I mean, is it really out of the realms of possibility that they do deals with the Greys or any other spacefaring species?
Well, we know they do. We've got written evidence of it. John Dee described about this was the formation of the British Empire with Elizabeth I. He was in contact with microbes, as he called them. He says they're akin to when we look under the microscope and see microbes. We're aware of them, but we can communicate with these entities. And so basically, he was asking a favour for microbes to found the British Empire. And it was, if you ever look at the defeat of the Spanish Armada in the English Channel, it's not just that we had a favourable storm which made a lot of their ships run afoul of rocks. Their ships were absolute state of the art. They were galleons, they had multiple decks of cannon, they were really good warships, and we had just like some leaky old ships which we set on fire.
Well, Zero used to say
run on them.
Zero used to say that he consulted a crystal skull, didn't he?
What, John Dee?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he did, didn't he?
No,
yeah,
not John Dee. Francis Drake. Francis Drake, because you know he went. Because you know he went to play bowls before he went to fight this Spanish Armada.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's very it's famous. Someone told him the Spanish Armada was coming, so he said, "I'm just going to go and pop off and have a game of bowls first." But Zero's theory was that he actually spoke to a crystal, went to consult a crystal skull. That bowls was a cover story.
Euphemism for, yeah. Oh, he's rolling crystal skulls together and then doing some sort of divination, maybe. But the thing, I heard, Irish gobshite Thomas Sheridan was describing the Battle of the Spanish Armada. He says, imagine if like the Mexican military, imagine if the Mexican cartels were armed with Cessnas and crop dusters, and the Americans got their F-35 bombers, and that somehow the Americans have managed to completely destroy the US Air Force, and then the Mexicans become the predominant empire. That's how likely it was that the English, this, sort of backwater, cold, damp island, became to rule the world with the largest empire ever seen, and defeated the largest empire at the time, which was the Spanish. So it's, it's strange to think that, because everyone just sort of takes it for granted that, Anglos are the best in it, bruv. Everyone knows that. The sun never sets on the British Empire. But 500 years ago, that wasn't the case. I mean, I know it comes as a surprise to you and I that Anglos weren't always on top. But there was a time when the Spaniards weren't just, known as the place where you can go and get a cheap beero.
Mind you, the Portuguese were the same as well. The Portuguese were punching above their weight, weren't they?
Yeah, well, you see, that's why they allied with us, because they knew they were onto something good there. And they're the oldest allies that we've ever had. But, I mean, I assume you've talked about Foo Fighters in World War II as well.
No, I was just literally going through some UFO reports.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that there was talks about flying saucers or Foo Fighters in World War II.
The whole flying saucer thing is a misnomer, isn't it? Because that dude, I can't remember. Can you remember the guy's name, Don? The one that did the original
Roswell incident.
The guy who first saw the first flying saucer and reported it. He didn't say they were flying saucers. He said they were flying like saucers skipping on the water. It's actually like a misquote.
But I like the idea that they're flying saucers. I mean, you've seen the Forbidden Planet and the Day the Earth Stood Still. I mean, flying saucers are just part and parcel. Yeah, oh yeah, the old theremin and
Yeah,
oh yeah, it's
woo.
good stuff. That is. Yeah,
Kenneth
know it's.
Arnold was the guy.
Oh, okay.
June
And that was the
24th,
because
1947. Oh,
I mean,
okay. Then so
this is
no, I am wrong. He was quoted at the time saying the shape of the objects he saw was like a saucer, disc, or pie plate. And several years later, he added also that objects move like saucers skipping across the water.
Because I mean, again, you'll have to chat. I apologise for this. This is what happens when you're a Johnny Come Lately. I don't know if you've talked yet about how the Apollo missions, the astronauts were told to report any observations and not to do speculation, just to report what they saw. So they described L-shaped and cigar-shaped craft which were flitting about in the in space, and I think there was even sort of descriptions that it reminded them a bit of when you look at, say, a sample of bacteria, like you picked up some pond water and you can see all sorts of little plankton-like creatures swimming about in it. They said it's like looking at plankton under a microscope. They saw these creatures with flagella just flitting along in space, which is like, well, how does that work? Because, I mean, what's a tail got to push against in space?
Yeah.
But I mean, chat. I'm sorry I can't see this at the moment because I'm phone posting. But I mean, hopefully the chat will be like, "Oh yeah, we know what Hobbit's talking about."
You know
yeah,
what? You know what
these,
chat are like. They never talk about what's going on the actual stream, do they?
No, I like it. Chat just seem to be preoccupied with their own gossip, and it's just like it's got nothing to do with what we're talking about, and it's always very distracting when I look at it because I'm
Agnes
the chat's more
Patria
interesting
says,
than what we're saying.
Agnes Patch says, going to start from the beginning on 1.5. Is it just 1 hour and 20 minutes of Hobbit's autism?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Warra says, I thought the
Yeah.
English were using new boats which hid most of the hull under the water, but the Spanish didn't.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it might be worth looking up the Spanish Armada at some point and just sort of saying, like, oh, this was an interesting battle. I mean, how did the English defeat them? And then it's not just one event. It's not like the Spanish said, oh, well, we've lost. Okay, it's time to let the English become the predominant empire. What did we do, us English, to become the predominant empire? And the Spaniards and the French and the Germans couldn't compete against us.
Well, Zero, again, was absolutely convinced that it was like a big will to power thing, didn't he? You know, like fake it till you make it. Like John Dee was like the like British sorcerer, wasn't he?
Well, he was the original 007. He would sign his documents 007.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the things that got to be asked is will to power. Yeah, but whose will is it? Because I mean, it's all well and good saying John Dee and
you mean whose will in it? Whose will in it? Whose will in it?
Who's winning it?
Whose will in it?
Because I'm just thinking, is it the will of these microbes that John Dee was describing?
Are they the same microbes that were flying around in space? Is that where you're bringing it together, Hobbit?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. There was no reports in the Spanish Armada, and then suddenly some ships from the skies flew down and set fire to the Spanish Armada sails and microwaved the sailors. No, they didn't say that, but I'm beginning to wonder sometimes. I'm even starting to wonder if maybe the Bermuda Triangle is not actually just swamp gas over Venus, but it is actually flying saucers doing funny burgers.
Yeah, because that's pretty interesting. The way they instruments fuck up and everything. But no, LOL, it's just people confused while they're flying. it's the so-called rational explanations for these things are like worse than the actual like thinking that it's something from outer space, isn't it?
It's the real conspiracy theory is just the swamp gas over Venus. There you go. There's a rational explanation. Move on. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, LOL.
Yeah. Oh well. What can you do, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm at to the stage where I want to say goodnight to my family and do things like that. So
Okay, Hobbit.
Do apologise, guys, but exceptional circumstances means I can only pop in to give my 5 minutes worth, and I have to be social again. Yeah.
Nice one. Cheers, Hobbit, mate.
See you guys.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye, mate.
Do you want to pick up on any of that, Donny?
I mean, just the superior levels of autism that I cannot recreate.
you couldn't recreate.
Hobbit is the main.
You couldn't recreate those levels of autism in a lab, mate.
No.
These are paranormal levels of autism from the Hobbit Meister. Right, so I found a missing time at the Scottish borders. Don't go silent on me. Missing time, a lapse in our conscious memory with a specific time period. October 1980, location Scottish borders, time 4 p.m. The following incident is a preliminary report with a full report to follow in due course. Stephanie, pseudonym, it reported the following strange experience which dates back over 30 years. In October 1980, Stephanie, her parents and her children were on a car journey from Banbury to Fife. While crossing the border around Jedburgh on their way to Edinburgh, they observed a strange object, and it appears that their journey took 7 hours from the Scottish borders to Edinburgh. Below is Stephanie's written account of the events. So, written account by Stephanie. Driving from Banbury Oxon to Anstruther, Fife. My parents, father aged 62, driver, mother aged 56, front seat passenger, myself aged 32, and my daughter 12, son 10, son 8 in the back seat. We drove across the borders on the road to Abbotsford. This is a B road, quiet and picturesque. As we crossed the border around 4 p.m, we decided to stop at the next town for coffee. I was in the middle of the back seat with my daughter on my right and my sons on my left. On my right was the south lane of the road, bordering that a narrow band of trees. I saw an object rise through the trees. It was completely horizontal as it rose, matte black with no windows, no sign of manufacturer as in bolts or panels. It was in one piece, seamless. I would say it stayed at treetop height. The treetops did not move. There was no wind. We were travelling around 45 miles an hour. The object paced us. My father slowed to a crawl and turned round in his seat. The object moved at our speed throughout. My father suggested stopping the car, but my mother and I were afraid and persuaded him not to. The object was less than 20 feet from the car and less than 20 feet off the ground. It was triangular with a bulge where the cockpit would have been, about 10 feet wingtip to tip, 10 feet front to back. My father told me to take a picture. The camera was on the back window ledge, but as I reached for it, I was overcome by a terror. I felt that 40 minutes had elapsed, but we had not gone far. I realised my children were getting scared, and I diverted their attention to a storybook and continued to read. The craft flew off behind the car at an amazing speed. It immediately reappeared about half a mile down the road for a few minutes before flying off at great speed. No cars passed during this time. When we arrived at the border town, I think it was Jedburgh, all the shops were closed, so we continued on to Edinburgh. My next memory of the journey was after 11 p.m, driving around the ring road at Edinburgh. Everyone was stressed. My father and I had a shouting match, the one and only of our lives. He was stressed about the time, couldn't understand why we were running so late. I knew it was around 4 p.m. when we were at the border when we saw the object. We stopped at Jedburgh and used the public toilets. Everywhere was closed. It was well past midnight when we arrived at Anstruther. I don't know the distance, but I'm sure that it's not 9 or 10 hours travelling. I'm not sure of the distance from the borders to Edinburgh, but I doubt if it is more than 100 miles yet. It took us 7 hours. Note approximate distance to Jedburgh to Edinburgh is 48 miles. So, further observations. Do you want to talk about that so far then, Donny? What do you think to that?
I mean, yeah, usually there are cases where people lose track of time and they wake up, like basically they're brought either forward or, usually forward in time.
Yeah.
Time stops.
So I think that's what happened with the was it Betty and Barney Hill, wasn't it? They lost time and they didn't really think about it for a long while, and then they started having nightmares, didn't they? Because people start remembering stuff, don't they?
Yeah, that always happens.
Yeah. But the problem, apparently there's a problem with the hypnosis. If the hypnosis has to be done absolutely perfectly, doesn't it? Otherwise, you can plant memories in there, can't you?
Yeah, because the people who, It's like sometimes you'll have a dream that's really crazy, and you'll remember it
Yeah,
as soon as you wake up, but then you'll forget it immediately.
yeah.
It's a similar thing with this.
So, there are further observations from Stephanie in the form of email, dialogue and telephone conversations. When they reached the Scottish borders, it was about 4 p.m. and still daylight. They wanted to stop for a coffee and a break with the children. However, for some reason, there was nothing open in Jedburgh, and she had the sense of uneasiness as to why everywhere was closed. Okay, that's a bit weird. There was some very unusual behaviour between her father and herself as they reached Edinburgh about 11 p.m, and they had a vociferous argument which was very, very, very unusual. Stephanie explains this in her own words. As we reached Edinburgh about 11:30 p.m, my father and I had the only row of our lives, shouting at each other. I feel this must have been caused by some unacknowledged stress. Stephanie goes on to describe further anomalies after the events. I did not talk to the children about the object. We had a holiday in Fife. My parents travelled on to Aberdeenshire. They collected us after 10 days and we drove back to Banbury. After a few days, I called each of the children separately into a room and asked them to draw the objects and describe what had happened. Their accounts and drawings were identical to mine. I've never again discussed the details of this event with them. I had bad sunburn the following week on the east coast of Scotland in October. My period stopped for 4 months, although there was no chance of pregnancy. Over the years, I found I could read tarot and had gut feelings which usually came true. 14 months later, an object appeared between the roofs of 2 houses as the children and I were walking home. It was 5 houses down from ours. The object was not visible, but 3 lights flashed side, centre and middle. We watched for several minutes until the children grew afraid and I rushed them off home. I looked out of the window when I got in, watched the lights across the bottom of my garden and moved stately over the field and out of sight. It seemed the same shape and size as the one we had seen before. Stephanie also told me she has problems with her electrics in that she appears to affect electrical gadgets around her, such as lights, computers, etc. She explains, I could not wear a watch for many years as they were gain time and would not work properly. We had exploding light bulbs in our house, and that continued until about 5 years ago. But by then, not very frequently. One day, as my daughter and I sat on the sofa, the record player behind us began to play. It was not plugged into the wall. Most of the electrical appliances broke over many years. I was buying electric kettles every 2 months until it became a joke amongst our friends. About 2 years after the incident, Stephanie had the urge to write everything down that had occurred and still has this document in an envelope she has never opened. I asked her if she could possibly locate this, but so far she has not been successful in finding this account of her experiences. Recently, she sought the service of a hypnotherapist, as felt she wanted to find a way to recall what had happened, as everything seemed to be a blank from trying to find a place for the family to have coffee and then reaching Edinburgh 7 hours later. He remembered a lady in Beaufort, Jenny Randalls, had spoken on the problems with hypnosis, and the Beaufort Nick National Investigations Committee had banned its use as a method of investigation into high strangeness experiences. I explained to her the real problems of hypnosis and that this would not elicit an objective truth of her experience, and that hypnosis can be fantasy prone and very inaccurate in uncovering an unbiased and objective truth that is associated with experiences like this. There can also be dangers in exploring these experiences with the use of hypnosis. It appears that the hypnotherapist Stephanie used has conducted himself in a way that is responsible, and there has been no new information forthcoming. Stephanie told me she has experienced many unusual incidents during her life of paranormal nature. She states that I found I was very sensitive to atmospheres and picked up nuances in speech, and so often I knew what was going to happen. Life has been a constant of small strange events. I have never knowingly seen a ghost, never created a vision. They come to me. I learned to read tarot and found I was really gifted, tremendously accurate. Stephanie agreed for Beaufort AI, Tony Eccles, to follow up her report with an interview, and Tony spoke with Stephanie at her home last October 2011. Tony will be documenting his interview with Stephanie in due course. Footnote, it is significant that high strangeness narratives such as this one have become more prevalent within the last 2 years, and they reflect some of the complex high strangeness cases that were reported to Bufora during the 90s and at one time comprised 8% of reports to Bufora. There could be many reasons for the increase of these reports, and certainly there has been an escalation in the media's interest in the UFO subject during last year, in addition to the thousands of websites and articles devoted to addressing the many and varied issues that surround these curious reports. Bufora will focus on these strange and compelling cases in future articles, addressing some of the core theories and possibilities as to the nature of these extraordinary human experiences. Further information on electrical anomalies, such as those experienced by Stephanie, can be read under Strange Places on the Bufora website. The article is entitled Night Shift. Gloria Heather Dixon, March 2012. What do you think to that one then, Danny?
Yeah, it seems like some people, I mean, it's not really radiation, but they get hit with some kind of static and it just offsets any kind of electrical or, electromagnetic,
Do you think it's whatever they use to stop the cars and things like that? It kind of...
Probably, because, EMP would do that that would stop a watch. But for some reason, like, this is like a controlled EMP where it's only for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Whereas with regular EMP, it would just knock everything out.
I wonder if it's possible if you had the right kind of right kind of electromagnetism, whether you could remove time from people's brains, like reset someone's brains.
Yeah, because sometimes they mention that they have like some kind of like some kind of almond-like smell when they encounter these things.
Yeah.
When they go like deep into some of these, these witnesses.
Because also it seems they kind of tag them like a whale or a seal or something, don't they, as well, and follow them around.
Yeah, I mean, there have been people that they've had implants from some of these things, but that stuff never really goes anywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how it never gets... No one ever finds one and takes one out and looks at it, do they?
Yeah, I don't know if it would, you put it through an atomic absorption analysis, what elements would it be? Probably be an unknown element if it's,
if it's alien.
It's not something that came from Earth. Yeah.
It's kind of
table.
It's kind of, because don't they talk about like silicon-based life forms being a possibility as well? Isn't there a silicon-based life form on Earth, isn't there?
I don't know. I mean, there could be microbes that live within... I mean, there are some insects that live within sand that hibernate there, like those like mud skipper things, and there are like parasites like that are active, those parasites that can control, like snails. They just like go into their
those
brains
plant
and
things.
make them do abnormal shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And fish as well. Make like fish swim to the surface. They'll make snails emerge so that they get eaten by birds, but it's like a bird parasite that triggers like snails to do weird shit.
There's the zombie ant thing, isn't there? There's that plant that grows in ant heads and takes them over, isn't there? Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of this. It's some weird stuff the way some people seem to have, because don't they think some of these abductions are generational as well?
Yeah. Back at the beginning, which I mean, like the cell phone somebody saw inside a movie, like the time traveler analogy, that also goes back to that.
Yeah, because it's weird. I mean,
yeah, because people can be charged with electricity. People can retain a charge.
Aren't there some people that have problems with this? Like they just kill electrical gadgets all of the time.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Don't it's usually women, isn't it?
See the conductivity. Yeah.
I'll see if I can find a woman.
It's still on Bufora, huh?
Yeah. Googling.
Low energy.
Hey, how you doing, mate?
You ended the show yet?
No, I'm going to end in a minute. I think got 15 minutes more.
Spooky.
Yeah. We just do a short one. Only 15 minutes short anyway.
The space skull one.
Space Skull. Oh yeah, that's quite interesting. That one is. Shall I show that one?
Yeah.
Where is that? Is it in the reports?
David Newton. Yeah. It's
Which section's it in?
peculiar
sighting of the space skull.
sighting of space skull.
That should do us then, shouldn't it? I'll show that one.
David Newton before a science and astronomy consultant. There are certain groups of witnesses who you'd expect to be able to provide a very good quality UFO report. For the example, professional pilots and astronomers because of their familiarity with sky and their technical expertise. The witness in this case, Peter Rogerson, falls into the latter category as a well-experienced amateur astronomer. Peter's 66 and lives in the outskirts of Derby, where this observation took place. In his younger years, Peter was fascinated by astronomy, but in his teens, the interest turned to electronics. Now retired, in his younger years, Peter was fascinated by astronomy, Now retired, his interest in astronomy has reemerged. He has been using the telescope to observe and image a range of astronomical objects, including Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and its Galilean moon, Saturn, the moon, and sunspots during autumn. Taking advantages of the long dark winter nights and early sunsets, Peter set up his telescope and camera about 5:20 p.m. on the evening of 11 November 2018. His intention was to observe and image a star called Polaris B, the small companion star to the pole star Polaris. Many astronomers use telescopes on equatorial mounts that track the small companion star to the stars as the Earth turns, but these mounts typically make it difficult to observe the part of the sky near Polaris itself. To try and image Polaris, Peter was using telescope mount to modify alt-as setup, i.e. the telescope tube could move in an up-down, left-right direction, which has the effect of making stars appear to drift across the telescope's field of view as the Earth turns. Peter's telescope is a Bresser's 70mm diameter refractor of 700mm focal length. The camera he uses is a Zaboni SV105 digital electronic eyepiece mounted on a prime focus.
These are amounts of autism that shouldn't be possible, aren't they?
Yes. Calibration indicated that the camera sensor 1 pixel was equal to 0.89 arc seconds on the sky, which was very useful measurement to determine the size of unusual object that he saw. He was still setting up for the evening when he captured the object that is central to this report. Peter hadn't viewed this telescope at Polaris directly, but was at this time observing in the region of the sky just to the left of Polaris. From his viewpoint, as indicated in the map below, you might want to put this on screen. Peter said, I was in the process of beginning the aiming, focusing, exposure adjusting process when I happened upon the object, hence my uncertainty in its precise location. This is right around Ursa Minor. Peter said, I observed an almost stationary object to the left of Polaris, which was like a star, but similar in shape to a tumbling skull. Very dramatic description. Images captured by the SV105 camera show how this description seems appropriate for a mystery object. Peter said this first thought was, that's funny, what's flickering in a very odd way and doesn't look circular. My initial thought that it was an ISS, International Space Station, but of course, for numerous reasons, it wasn't. Peter provided Bufura with 2 folders containing 107 raw images, PNG files, that he captured of the mysterious object. Each sequence lasted about 6 seconds. The images are very small on these raw images, so are not reproduced in full here. However, a few cropped but otherwise unprocessed images are shown below. And you see a lot of weird images here.
Yeah, he said it looks like I think there's a GIF. Ah, here you go. If you go down far enough, there's a GIF.
Yeah.
So he found that next to Ursa Minor, did he?
He slowed it down and compared it to how it appeared at the time, and then the second animated one shows the approximate real-time motion of the object. Okay, so animation 2 is quite illuminating. While apparently tumbling motion could be atmospheric blurring as seen through a small telescope testing the equipment would seem to rule this out. Tests taken of similar brightness stars show that the Peters telescope and camera are working perfectly. Stars are small, round, and bright, and do not show any detail of the images of the tumbling skull reveal. Hence, our conclusion is that the sighting is of a genuine extended object, and tumbling effect is caused by genuine motion, a fast rotation, possibly chaotic tumbling of the object. The changes in appearance from one frame to the next would suggest the object was spinning or tumbling rapidly, which you wouldn't expect from an aircraft or a normal satellite, which my initial thought was that this was some space debris, perhaps a rocket booster or a defunct satellite, or possibly a passing irregular-shaped asteroid, the motion of which made me think twice about explanation. I had already checked out to see what the satellites and space debris might be visible in this part of the sky and found no suitable candidates. The animations show a slow downward drift of an object through the field of view. Remember, the telescope was set up in an alt-az mode, so stars would gradually move across the field as the Earth turned. Calculations confirmed that this drift was almost certainly due to the Earth's rotation, meaning the object, whatever it was basically stationary or the sky. Peter himself computed more than a dozen scenarios to the account of the object's drift, including possibilities that it could have been a Chinese lantern or a low Earth orbit satellite. Peter said the Chinese lantern idea, I ruled this out largely on the grounds of size, calculated it had to have been the altitude of some 7 miles to appear as it did, which data suggests is quite unfeasible, and it didn't look like a lantern. Based on the precise measurements of vertical and horizontal drift of these images, we can determine the object should have been close to a star 5 Ursa Minoris, and it gives some statement. RA 14 hours, that's coordinates 27 minutes 31 seconds, December plus 75 degrees 41 minutes 45.6 seconds. If the object were a satellite, space rock, or debris, then its orbital motion would be significant, and it would be difficult to track with a telescope. Peter's configuration, an object like this would have whizzed across and out of the field of view in less than a second. The object was close enough to show this amount of detail in the telescope that it must have been relatively close and therefore moving quite rapidly as to be seen from the ground, unless we have a very unlikely situation that it was headed precisely towards a witness. The lack of motion across the sky would suggest that this object was extremely distant, i.e. an astronomical in nature. However, its apparent tumbling motion is unlike anything that could be typically seen through the telescope. You check for deep sky objects, e.g. planetary nebulae, in this part of the sky that might, with atmospheric turbulence, give this appearance, but again, I have no suitable candidates. So yeah, the conclusions here, witness equipment appears to work perfectly. It's an image of a star seen.
Dude knows exactly what he's in about, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Kind of weird to wonder what it is, though, isn't it?
Because there's no real precedent for this.
Because he's like a fairly skilled amateur. Was he a fairly skilled amateur astronomer then? Is he?
Yeah, with that kind of equipment, it would have to be.
Yeah.
Non-astronomical candidates such as satellite, space debris, and Earth-crossing asteroid would move rapidly across the field of view, which is not the case. Lack of motion across the sky would suggest the object was astronomical in nature, but not suitable. Non-stellar objects are visible in this part of the sky. Same argument for airplanes, helicopters, and weather balloons, as one would expect. Their relative motion, magnified through telescope, would rapidly take them out of the field of view. Angular size of imagery indicates a smaller object such as a Chinese lantern or a drone would need to be at an altitude approximately 10 kilometers, which seems well beyond the normal range. The object was not seen since there, and no observations from other witnesses are received to their knowledge. So we appear to have run out of easy and obvious situations with this particular sighting. Any suggestions from readers would be appreciated. It's from February 2019. It's like stationary space junk or something.
Weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is a lot of.
Now that works.
Oh, he's back again.
Yeah, so I'm on the computer now, and it's done an update for the graphics card. So it's like, oh yeah, you definitely want to use the graphics card as your primary sound driver. What with it being connected to a monitor with no sound output?
Thanks, Fen. It's like an episode of the Daily Shower, Hobbit.
Thanks, Microsoft. Yeah. Oh, it's always.
Did you seen the tumbling space junk, Hobbit?
No.
Right, so have a look in general, that story there.
Mm.
These are levels of
going-
autism that you could really appreciate, Hobbit.
So let's have a look in general. Oh, Space Girl. Yeah, I'll be up for that.
Yeah.
How many more weeks away are we from worst career episode?
I think I'm gonna do Fred West next week with Ian.
Yeah.
So then we could do it the week after. When are you going to be back by the week? You're going to be back by the week after, aren't you?
Yeah, will be. We haven't booked a ferry yet because my mum was sort of bit up in the air. It's like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to stay 2 weeks or I might stay longer and you drive back by yourself. But she's just decided because her sisters are being cunts, basically. She's like, yeah, I'll spend 2 weeks and then I'm going back with you because I don't want to be by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's all a bit up in the air. And I said to her, well, look, how about you show me the town you grew up in? Because I haven't even visited the bloody cathedral in Tournai. I was like, come on, I mean, I've been all this time there, never seen the sights.
I'm trying to find a story. You've heard of those stories before, haven't you? You know where the women have like so much electricity that they like burn out kettles and things just by touching them? It's like a woman phenomena, isn't it, Hobbit?
It's not just a woman phenomena, it's a day phenomena. Electronics he touches dies.
Do you know what it's called? Because I'm just trying to find some like articles about it. Because basically what it was, we read out a UFO story, and the woman, since she had the UFO experience, she burns out kettles and bulbs pop around her and things like that.
Yeah, because kettles, bulbs, toasters, all of those are very basic. They're not even really electronics, they're electrics. And if you're burning out wires in a kettle or a bulb, that just means you've got a charge around you. What would be interesting is, that some people can detect an aura around people. Get them to ask what the aura looks like, because apparently, auras or Velostrovsky photography, something like that.
Yeah.
The reason I mention that is because they said the people have looked at auras of crackheads, and the crown is missing, and they're just saying, well, that's why people on crack end up schizophrenic, because basically demons can come in through their skull, and they're saying that, well, look, you can actually get to that state through meditation, and then because you've built up discipline in your mind.
Oh, your internet connection didn't like that, Hobbit. No. Go in. I found something from. I see you back. No, you got again.
Oh dear.
Oh, you back. You're back.
Good.
Yeah.
Hit and miss, in other words. But yeah, regards to crackheads, I suppose what they're doing is because they're rocketing through that bit which you normally get with transcendental meditation, and they're completely stoned off their gourd. When the demons come in and start whispering light ideas like, you should definitely smoke more crack and you should suck dick for more crack, they go, oh yeah, that's a good idea, I'll do that.
Apparently they called them sliders. Despite the name, sliders phenomena are not limited to streetlights only. Often folks who share your ability can't wear watches. They will stop working within a couple of days regarding how many new batteries they put in them. They also affect other electrical appliances such as headlights and alternators in automotive vehicles, lights, light bulbs and computers. Light bulbs may blow every time a slider touches a lamp or a light switch. Computers may freeze up or experience other problems. CD players may change tracks suddenly whenever a slider is near. Magnetic phenomena may also manifest. For example, sliders may be unable to use credit cards because the cards become unreadable after they've been carried on their person.
It's a bit difficult to get an interview with one of them, because even if you're using something basic like a tape recorder, the tape's just going to be all garbled.
Yeah, that's a bit weird, isn't it? So what these people are saying is supercharged bioenergy fields, auras, seem to be the cause. The human nervous system is chemical and electrical in nature. Neurotransmitters are electrical impulses. When we're emotionally wound up, our nervous systems light up like a busy switchboard. While in most people this does not affect streetlights, etc., in people who already have high energy, getting revved up can boost them to a level where they actually affect electrical systems around them in noticeable ways. Many electrical appliances are easily affected or damaged by sparks of high voltage electricity. We might say that high energy people who are revved up send sparks that trip or blow fuses. This is mad, isn't it? So do you think it's like possible for your bioelectricity to like for you to just make too much bioelectricity or something like that?
Yeah, it's like an electric eel, capacitance. It's like a capacitor. So it would store up a charge and, like a static electricity. If you rub a blanket together and then touch somebody, it zaps them.
I was working in this office where they'd have these nylon or polyester carpets. And when I would walk from the office to the kitchen, when I touch the metal handle, I'd always get a zap from it.
Yeah.
And all the veterans would be like, and they were laughing, and it's just like, he's still got a static cling. Like, for whatever reason, the veterans that are working there, when they touch the metal handle, they wouldn't get zapped.
What, it's like their like body electricity had kind of like got used to it or something.
Well, they were grounded.
I remember in computer science class we used to put our hand on the screen and then touch the person next door. Oh, hobbies.
Oh, yeah.
Uno asks, Donnie, did you like Donnie Darko?
Yeah.
I thought it was alright. It was quite interesting.
Was it that like weird schizo rabbit thing?
Yeah.
That was about that film. I like it. Yeah, I've never had like a hot goth GF to watch it.
You need ideally someone with a Jack Skellington tattoo. Is that who you're supposed to watch Donnie Darko with?
It's kind of like
Oh
that.
no, the fat chick's like The Nightmare Before Christmas, and the goth chick's like Donnie Darko.
Oh right, okay.
But you can draw a Venn diagram, and there's a sizable overlap between those two subgroups.
So are we done? Are we done? Do we want to try and attempt to wrap this up somehow?
Oh, you're still on air, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, hello, chat. This is
hello.
This is Hobbit After Dark, the unfiltered Hobbit, which you hear when the show's over, because he didn't realise that. Oh, it's still 8 o'clock where you guys are, aren't you?
Oh, you want Central European time? Is that why you're all confused, Hobbit?
I'm coming to you from the future, you see. So, I mean, unfortunately, guys, as much as I'd like to do an episode on time, because it is a very woo-woo subject if you start thinking about it, I don't have enough words to describe why time is weird. Suffice to say, the description of, well, time's a measurement, LOL, it's like, that's not really satisfactory, it doesn't explain it. I think time is an apparition which was imposed on us by the Babylonians in Sargon of Akkad, and I think Lord of the Rings is actually a retelling of the battle, where they describe him as Sauron, and so the idea was to stop the idea of time coming to Europe, because that's where we got our system of slavery from, and the Industrial Revolution and all that dehumanizing crap.
Well, if you want to hear me go, a bit woo woo, I just wonder how many times we've done this bit. I mean, is like the Atlantis stuff? Is that like where we've got to this kind of a similar stage to this before, and then everything's collapsed, and then we've started again?
Well, I mean, if you ever listen to Kaptain, not that he come onto this show because of the awful stigma of you woo-woo fantasists.
Yeah.
But even he will talk about dysgenics and the fall from the peak, and that the Victorian Empire, we were the best and the brightest we ever were. And thanks to dysgenic policies like the welfare state, we're breeding the wrong sort of people. But worse than breeding the wrong sort of people, we're having the wrong sort of people in. And that's why we can't have nice things like Concorde and hovercraft anymore.
And space.
Those sorts of inventions won't exist when Abdul Jamal is in the Oxford University Science Department.
Oh, Uno's got a question. He says, the off-planet people have information and data on certain human bloodlines and they make checks on them, ?
Yeah.
You think that's possible?
Well, I mean, you've only got
because I said to Donnie, I said they seem to because they follow these people round, don't they? And they seem to tag them like a deer, like a shark or a whale or something, don't they?
Yeah.
You've only got to ask David Icke, how much human DNA and how much reptilian DNA is in the royal family.
Yeah. Have you guys done an episode on the draconian people? The dragon line of people in like Scotland?
That's why we have a draconian policy as not being a nice thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because I do want to do one, because I want to find loads of those videos with lizard people glitching out.
Yeah.
Some of those are quite good. Have you seen that video of that lizard woman where she glitches, where she plays with something on her leg? She has some device on her leg, plays with it, and then she starts glitching out. Have you ever seen that one? And then she gets caught by the camera and pulls her skirt down, and then she glitches out.
Yeah, I remember the 9/11 one with that the priest and his hand just glitches all around, and it looks really demonic.
Yeah. Right. So, anyone else? Anything else to add?
That was pretty good.
We're still on the subject of UFOs, and I was thinking to myself, there's more and more they're talking about objects coming from the sea, and the Royal Navy's reported seeing objects just shoot up the sea like a rocket.
Yeah.
So the thing is, we know, and I may be just doing one of those popular tropes of saying that we know more about space than the sea, man.
Oh, we've already spoken about this, I think, because like exploration-wise, we've done fuck all on the sea, haven't we?
I mean, we haven't even been down to the Mariana Trench to record a heavy metal.
It's the pressures though, isn't it, that are holding us back?
Yeah, but there is. But then again, there have been some unmanned vehicles which have gone down to the Mariana Trench. I was hoping you never watched Def Clock's Metalocalypse, have
you?
No. They're doing an episode of it, and they're trying to record an album, and the lead guitarist's pickups are too sensitive, so they have to get away from other sources of noise pollution. So they go to the deepest, darkest place they can on planet Earth, which is the Mariana Trench.
Yeah, because what was I going to say? Do you think there is some crossover between like space and water? I mean, if a UFO is gonna survive space, is it going to be able to survive water?
Yeah, if it went deep enough, the pressure would be similar, wouldn't it?
If it's conventional engineering, you're in the space one. You're building one which is good at surviving pulling tension, because you've got a pressurized atmosphere inside and you've got the vacuum of space outside. So that's kind of like trying to suck the hull apart.
Yeah.
Whereas in the sea, you've got the very opposite, and you're building a structure which is good for compressive forces. Now, the thing is, the sort of engineering approach you take to making a submarine is similar to the engineering approach you take for a spacecraft. The main difference is the spacecraft you're trying to make as lightweight as possible, because at the moment it's still quite tricky to send anything sizable up that far.
So do you think there's some way they find of like reducing the spaceship's mass? Is there something they, like some sort of like field or something to reduce?
Probably.
They'd have to do something like that, though, wouldn't they?
Mm.
Well, that's the main thing. If you've got a way of dealing with inertia, then you can basically, or dealing with inertia and gravity, you could just string your thoughts
like a
together.
Gyroscope we were talking about earlier.
The thing is, the main thing about saying like shooting out of the sea is there's a lot of drag in water, a lot more than air, and a lot more than in space. So how do you make? I mean, what sort of power's involved where you can make something just literally shoot up like a rocket from the sea?
Yeah.
Could be hydraulic.
I mean, yeah, you can't compress water. So
Yeah.
all I know with conventional physics is if they want to make like a torpedo which goes really quickly underwater, they do something called supercavitation, where you heat up the water in front of the warhead's nose, so you make a bubble of steam, and then rather than the torpedo pushing in through water, which is incompressible, you can push through your bubble of steam, which can compress, and it causes this wave of collapsing bubbles behind it, which is really easy to pick up on sonar. But the advantage being is it's so quick, most ships don't have time to avoid it.
All I can think
My
of.
my point being with these unidentified flying objects, which are also unidentified sea objects, they're dealing with a branch of physics which is unknown to us, but clearly they've got some sort of way when they manipulate gravity. They're not just using rocket thrusters.
Yeah.
Well, the common propulsion method that I used to read about in magazines in the 90s is they literally do the event horizon bit, don't they? Where instead of the spaceship traveling from point A to point B, the spaceship bends point A next to point B, so you're not. So then they just travel that bit. Yeah.
Oh, where you warp space.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, always in the science fiction, I mean, there seems to be a bit of consensus, and I agree with it, that they're saying that it's quite easy to fold space when not much is there, and then you just sort of jump between one point and another. And then the other sort of thing, like they say, if it's like a quantum portal, like they describe in fantasy, and then, oh, it's because you're constantly entangled to one place to another, so you can just make a doorway which opens up somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should do
propulsion methods.
Teleportation. But that gets more into sort of science and futurism than woo-woo.
Yeah.
Well, Hobbit, didn't you ever read about during when Columbus came over here? He called it St. Elmo's fire, but there are also accounts of something coming out of the water at them. It could have been a lightning storm, but I mean there are varying accounts.
Yeah, Hate Speech says the entire seabed has been mapped. Yeah, it has been mapped, but it hasn't been explored, has it? I mean, we know what it looks like, but we haven't been anywhere near there. I mean, because like, I mean, have they actually proved that with beyond a shadow of a doubt that giant squid exist?
Yeah, you get those cuttlefish things that are like mini squid, and they propel themselves with hydraulics like backwards, you know.
No, I mean the actual giant squid. I mean, talking about exploring the deep. I mean, there's only like anecdotal evidence, like sperm whales have been found with huge sucker marks on them and things. I don't think they've actually found and seen a giant squid in its habitat, have they?
No, only washed up, dead, and rotten.
Yeah. So, any more, Hobbit? Donnie?
That's pretty good.
Nope.
What's that, Hobbit?
Nope, not really.
Righto. Oh, we'll put a pin in that one for now then. So we'll say good night to everyone. Night all.